Dear guests, with your permission, I would love to start the first session of the symposium. Today, in the first session, we will try to look at the Turkish-Japanese relations from a bilateral perspective, but also try to understand an important region which we couldn't cover in our previous symposium in 2014, which is Central Asia, Eurasian angle. Last time in 2014 we focused mostly on the bilateral relations and the Middle East, but this year we also wanted to broaden the focus so that we can understand how Turkey and Japan respectively see that important region, because an important player in that particular region, Russia, has become more assertive on the world stage lately, but also even in the Middle East. So one of our objectives in this panel is also to understand what Russia means for Turkey, especially for the region, and how it may affect the bilateral relations between the two countries, but also the Central Asian developments. With that note, I would love to invite Professor Tetsuji Tanaka to be our first speaker. Professor Tanaka will not be using PowerPoint, and then after him we will listen to our Turkish speaker, Professor Oktay Tansever from Middle East Technical University, to present the Turkish view. Professor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your kind introduction. It is a great honor for me to have an opportunity to speak in front of a distinguished person from the Turkish government and academia and students. Okay? My name is Tanaka. As you know, in your friend, you can find out Istanbul, Ankara, named Tanaka. Tanaka is one of the biggest name, one of the 5 biggest names in Japan. Later, in our delegation, another Tanaka will coming up. Please remember Tanaka. Okay? And today, my duty is the Central Asia and Japan now has a very good relationship. I would like to inform you of our audience that what kind of situation is going on between Central Asian countries and Japan. So I prepared 8 items about this issue, but time is limited. So I have to make 2 or 3 items should be skipped. First one, my experience in Central Asia. Let me briefly speak about my involvement in Central Asia. In 1993, I was sent to a newly independent country in Central Asia as an advisor for economics and financial affairs under the sponsorship of the IMF and BOJ, Bank of Japan. For the past 20 years, following my 3 years assignment in the region, I have been frequent visit to the region in the advisory capacity to many governmental organizations and bilateral economic committee, as well as the university professor. As a result, I have worked in 8 countries among the 9 countries in Central Asia and the South Caucasus area. As an advisor to the government, I served for Kyrgyz, for instance, economic advisor to the president himself, and senior advisor to the national bank, which means central bank, and also Kazakhstan, advisor to the Minister of Education and Science, and also advisor to the Minister of Economy and Budget Planning, and Uzbekistan, anyway, so on and so on. So, in Central Asia, I have so many duty to governmental advisor to the professor status. I can show you my name card. This two name card, front and back, four page is also my position in the Central Asian area. There are so many. Accordingly, I had a chance to closely witness the nation-building process of most Central Asian countries and their relationship with Japan for nearly a quarter of a century. Okay. Item 2. Strong pro-Japan feeling in the Central Asia countries and their background. Most countries in Central Asia have a strong pro-Japan feeling. In the background is as follows. They believe that belong to the same ethnic group of Ural Altai. The Japanese and the people in the Central Asia have the strongest facial resemblance, facial resemblance in the world. The second, strong interest in Bushido, in the Bushido and samurai spirit. It's a common feeling with the chivalry in the nomadic culture. Third one, historical fact that Japan, a small country in Asia, defeated the powerful, the Roman dynasty in the Russo-Japanese War, and also no country in Central Asia has a memory of direct battle or confrontation in its history with Japan. For Japan, the Danes after the Second World War left a good image of serious hard workers. Especially their careful work was highly appreciated by the fact that in Tashkent we can find that Nagoi Opera Theater in Uzbekistan they built. That one did not collapse even in the big earthquake in 1966. Why? Interest in the Japanese economic development model that enabled to push resource-poor Japan to the second largest economy in GDP in the world, and their expectation for its introduction in the region. This is some kind of stimulus by Malaysia's Look East policy, high evaluation of Japanese high level of industrial technology and official cooperative management. And the next one is the expectation for ample provision of Japanese ODA. In the middle and latter half of the 1990s, Japan actively implemented the ODA, which made Japan the largest donor country in this region. Okay? Item 3. Three stages of Japan's positive diplomacy with Central Asia. Since the independence of the Central Asian country in 1991, the Japanese government has taken a positive diplomacy toward Central Asia in such three-step initiatives as shown below. But the first step is a diplomatic guideline toward Silk Road region policy. This introduced by Prime Minister, the Hashimoto, Prime Minister Hashimoto in July 1997. It was a great emphasis on the Central Asia and Caucasus area from the perspective of its geological importance, endowment of energy resources, and its historical and cultural bond with Japan, and aimed at positively strengthening their relationship. Based on the guideline, the Japanese government opened its embassy by till 2005 in all of the countries in Central Asia, and actively provided the ODA. And as a result, Japan stayed as the biggest donor country to these countries through the latter half of the 1990s. Step 2, Central Asia plus Japan dialogue initiated by Foreign Minister Kawaguchi in August 2004. This process has two objectives of strengthening bilateral relationship between Japan and each Central Asian country and fostering mutual dialogue among the Central Asia countries itself, especially to promote the latter objectives. Japan was ready to provide the necessary funds to share projects in the region. Already, 5 ministerial meetings of foreign ministers and 10 senior official meetings have been held to discuss multi-layered issues. For instance, agricultural problems at the 5th Foreign Ministers meeting. However, further effort and progress are necessary in order to promote the inter-regional cooperative project aimed at the Central Asia Economic Community. And step 3 is a visit to the 5 Central Asian countries by Prime Minister Abe in October 2015, only last year. Prime Minister Abe realized an epoch-making visit to the whole region of Central Asia as the first Japanese Prime Minister that ever visited the area and had talks with each of the top of the countries. Top executive of about 40 companies, big companies, accompanied Mr. Abe, and they signed agreement on the development, mainly energy and mineral resources, and renewal of transportation and electricity facilities. Although they clearly show the priority of diplomacy in resources, in Japanese Shigen Gaiko, in the diplomacy, looking ahead, it will be necessary to make multilateral exchanges ranging from environmental prevision technology to education and medical care and tourism, admission of immigrant labor, as well as various cultural exchange. Item 4, Japanese role in the Central Asia. Although Japanese diplomacy tends to be oriented to diplomacy on the resources, as I've told, it is extremely important in the longer run and on a broader perspective to contribute to the peace building of Eurasia. For the stability and peace building in Eurasia, it is essential for the 10 countries alongside the border of China and Big Two, border of China and Russia, Central Asia country plus Mongolia and your country, Turkey, to grow into a softly united community that is politically and economically stable as a buffer zone country that were born after the collapse of the Soviet Union, that will also minimize the conflict along the border of two big powers of China and Russia. Okay? As you know, realistically, Japan has no ambition in Central Asia politically, militarily, and territorially, Japan will be able to contribute apart from selfish or direct national interest to the stable growth of these buffer zone countries through economic assistance and centering on ODA and other support in such area in environmental provision, technology, education, medical care, tourism, etc., etc. The stability and peace in Central Eurasia are quite beneficial to East Asia, even Japan too. Okay, item 5. My advice on the economic development method. After the independence in Central Asia, the country is forced to choose on their development method for transition economy between, as you know, the IMF Anglo-Saxon model. It is completely reliance on the market economy, and economic reform itself is in the short run. And the second one is Japanese East Asian model. That is temporary allowance of government intervention in the market, gradual economic reform in the long run. Okay? And many countries followed the first model. That means accepting the IMF conditionality to get the international fund support. But in Central Asia, where the market economy has not based on development, the former model did not prove to be effective. Okay? Especially in the resource-limited countries like Kyrgyz, Tajikistan, Georgia, Armenia, the confusion of national economy preceded to the reform with little or no fruit gain. So there is no gain, I say. I'd like to say. As a Japanese economic advisor myself, I remember that it would be the best scenario that in the initial stage of transition economy, they had better follow the Japan East Asian model first, but the IMF model should be taken into the latter stage where the market function come into work. Okay? There were complicated occasions where I supported the adoption of the IMF method, IMF model in the daytime meeting with the IMF, including the IMF World Bank representative. But while in the bilateral meeting with the President and the economic minister in the evening, I presented an honest advice to consider the adoption of the Japan East Asian model. Okay. Can you understand? I have the two faces, like Jan's face. Okay. My position is very complicated at the time. Okay. Item 6, maybe there is no time, I understand. So, Japanese policy on ODA, I skipped this one. But total ODA after independence, what Japanese government gave this area is total is $2.51 billion already. Not million, $billion. Okay? So, and I skip number 6 and go to the number 7. This is a very important issue. China's economic inroad to Central Asia and the Japanese position on it. The economies of Central Asia are experiencing considerable pressure from Russia and China for participation in the Eurasian Economic Union initiative, which is promoted by Putin, Russia, and the New Silk Road Economic Belt Institute, One Belt, One Road policy, advanced by Xi Jinping, China. The economic vector, capital, material, flow of human resources for realizing these economic development are directed eastward to Siberia and the Far East in the case of a Russian idea. But westward to West Asia, Eurasian, Europe, and the Middle East, in the case of Chinese idea. So, in other words, Central Asia economy subject to a pressure to be torn in East and West Presently, China's new Silk Road Economic Belt Initiative has a better chance of realization, so even the unexpectedly smooth startup of the AIIB, Asian Infra Investment Bank, is going very smoothly starting. Okay? There is no time. I should finalize. Item 8. Possibility of cooperation in Central Asia, Japan, and Turkey, your country. As far as my experience in Central Asia showed, affinity and trust of the Central Asia country on Turkey far exceed than that of Japan. The Central Asia country has a much affinity to your country. Okay. They have shared with Turkey many historical bases for mutual understanding that include race, tribe, base, and culture, language, and Islamic religion. So it is expected, as well as possible for Turkey, one of the 10 buffer zone countries between China and Russia, Turkey will take a leadership in strengthening this buffer zone. This is my idea. Okay? Given the high sense of trust of business community in Turkey and Japan, the risks of Japanese direct investment in Central Asia will be minimized by taking the form of joint venture, Turkish business and Japanese business joint venture in the region. In other words, collaboration between Japanese capital and technology and with Turkey's management capability and strong human networks in the region will be much meaningful to each other. The Turkish companies of construction and distribution business have, I witnessed many times, have already established great presence in the society of Central Asia. As you know, Japanese are not so familiar with Islamic culture and the Islamic world, and should emulate the way that the Turkish people deal with the people in the Islamic world. We have to learn. If, in any case, Turkey and Japan should cooperate to respond to the strong sense of affinity and trust of Central Asia countries toward Turkey and Japan. This sense is they exceeded those to China, to Russia, and even to US. So we have to make much contribution to the development of Central Asia, Turkey, and our country. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, listen. Thank you.
Without further, we move to Professor Oktay Tanasever to give one like that, to present the Turkish take on the same region.
Thank you. In my presentation, I would like to discuss Turkey's crisis with Russia, on its relations with Central Asian countries, and I would like to examine the dynamics in the region from this perspective, because both relations with Russia and Turkey are very important to these countries, and I would like to discuss the ways in which these relations could be handled by the Central Asian countries. Historically speaking, Turkey and Russia have been engaged in confrontational relations, and with the two basic exceptions. First one was during the interwar years. The second one was the decade between 2004 and 2014. And after the downing of the Russian bombardment jet near Turkey's border with Syria, marked the end of this period and a new confrontational period started in their bilateral relations. And this crisis is likely to have far-reaching impact on other regions as well, and that also includes Central Asia. Of course, Turkey didn't want to have that kind of confrontational relations with Russia, but it was Russia's choice to transform this relationship and sacrifice that partnership and cooperation to its designs over Syria and its reorientation towards international system. And this is also reflected in its policy towards Central Asia. Despite Turkey's attempts at managing this crisis and making it more local and focusing on ways of overcoming this crisis diplomatically, Russia flatly rejected this, even if it was not able to provide credible evidence to support its own position. It still demands apology and compensation from Turkey's side, which is not likely to happen because international community confirmed that Turkey's position is justified and supported with evidence. But I think Russia's position has nothing to do with what's going on in Syria. Probably last summer, Moscow made its decision, wider strategic decision, regarding this region, Middle East and Central Asia, and believed that it could create or transform its relations with the West by using these regional conflicts. And Central Asia has been one of the targets of Russian policy since the beginning of Eurasian Economic Union process, which became realized in 2015. With that policy, Russia first convinced Kazakhstan to join its economic zone, and I don't have time to get into details of the bureaucratic structure of this organization, but it is a fully Russian-controlled organization. It is a politically motivated organization and not quite compatible with the well-known principles of regional economic integration and globalization. It simply seeks to extend Russian influence to Central Asia. After controlling Kazakh trade policy, Moscow pressurized Kyrgyzstan to join the grouping. Kyrgyzstan was not really interested in joining this Russian-controlled organization, but it had to join because of its very close relations with Kazakhstan. Most of the foreign direct investment in Kyrgyzstan belongs to Kazakh investors, and Kazakhstan is central to Kyrgyz economy. But when we look at other countries, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Tajikistan, they flatly rejected to join this organization. I think this is a very important development in Central Asia, that these republics resisted Russian pressures, which was not really likely right after the end of the Cold War period. These countries, Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, are likely to orient to other countries, to the West, to China and other countries in the region. in order to counterbalance Russia. Turkey, in that sense, plays a very important role for Central Asia, and that policy is also important for its own policy towards Russia. Because Turkey is one of the countries that could reinforce the economic and political structures of Central Asian countries vis-à-vis Russia. It has special cultural and social ties to these republics. Plus, Turkey's investors, mostly medium and small-sized businesses, are quite active in Central Asia. Turkey, as I told you earlier, is not interested in escalating the crisis with Russia, but given Russia's refusal to solve this crisis with Turkey, it has no option other than counterbalancing Russia and also convincing most of them the right approach to bilateral relations is cooperation but not confrontation. In that sense, Turkey's trade relations with Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan will be quite pivotal. Both countries are interested in deepening that economic cooperation. I guess Turkey will use these two countries as a stepping stone for entering the Eurasian Economic Union area by signing special trade agreements. I don't think that Turkey will neglect other countries. These three countries will also see Turkey as their own stepping stone for deepening ties with the West and Europe. In that sense, energy diplomacy will be quite critical with regard to Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan and Azerbaijan have made considerable progress in solving their differences, and then EU support for the idea of Southern Energy Corridor could be realized with the integration of Turkmenistan to this western route to Europe via Turkey. When we look at these dimensions of bilateral relations between Turkey and Russia, I think Central Asia could be an important area for competition in the foreseeable future until the time when Russia changes this negative attitude. But in my opinion, Turkey should concentrate on confidence-building measures and de-escalating measures in Central Asia. But Turkey, of course, is likely to continue its military cooperation with Kazakhstan, with Kyrgyzstan. It has already partnership for peace agreements with these republics. This is the only channel how Turkey could strengthen these countries vis-à-vis Russia. Economically, as I said, these countries are likely to deepen energy and trade relations with Turkey, including Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. Even if the Eurasian Economic Union has energy as one of its mandates, I don't think that it will, oil and gas will be an element of that cooperation in the foreseeable future. So far they have been focusing on electricity cooperation. So this is the right moment for Turkey to concentrate on cooperation, mainly in natural gas business. To conclude, I would like to say that Russia's approach to the crisis with Turkey and its policy in Syria seem to be quite unsustainable in the future. Why? Because first, Turkey is not interested in that confrontation. Second, Syrian crisis is not likely to be over in the foreseeable future, unlike Russia's expectations, and gradually there is a risk that it could be a second Afghanistan for Russia, and this is really, Moscow may not really enjoy the benefits of its role in Syria. Only with bombardments, it may be forced to take a more active role on the ground. This could be quite devastating to Russia, with its economy severely affected by the sanctions, and also the relations with the West over Ukraine seem to be very conflictual. And Turkey, as a NATO country, has the backing of NATO allies, and this has been confirmed by many representatives, NATO representatives, and Russia's idea that Turkey was quite isolated within NATO is mistaken, and gradually Russia will realize its mistake and may concentrate on working with Turkey and normalizing its relations with Central Asia. But the main problem in Russia's understanding of the regional issues stems from its mistaken understanding of international system. It seeks to be so-called great power by confronting the West in various contexts, by pursuing policy of divide and rule in different regions. That may not work. In a globalizing world, the best approach that Russia should take is to cooperate and is to globalize, not to see any country, any region as its rival, but starting from Ukraine, it should first show the world that it's a good neighbor and it could solve problems diplomatically, not through these hegemonic policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Oktay, with this good note about Russian behavior. Now we move to Kohei Imai. He's our Turkish Japanese, and he's going to be talking about economic diplomacy and humanitarian diplomacy, which are becoming the common characteristics of the two countries' foreign policies. Kohei, you have 10 minutes. Yes, please.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Kohei Imai. I'm very glad to participate in this memorial symposium about Japan, Turkey, and I'd like to express my thanks to organizers, sponsors of the symposium, and distinguished guests and audiences. Today, I try to examine the similarities of Japanese and Turkish foreign policy, but I have only 10 minutes, so especially I focus on two approaches. These are economic diplomacy, nor trading state diplomacy, and humanitarian diplomacy. At first, the concept of trading state. What is a trading state? Economic diplomacy. First of all, I look at according to Richard Rosecrans, maybe many students who is study IR theory, he is author of the book Trading State, one of the classics of liberalism in IR. According to Rosecrans, the trading state outlined a state that aimed to improve its status in international politics and achieve the allocation of resources in its domestic politics within the functional trading system. In other words, trading state promotes the interdependence in world politics. So the core idea of trading state nor economic diplomacy is the expansion of interdependence can achieve stability and peace to regional and world politics. And Japan is undoubtedly a role model for this concept, trading state concept. Japan has to become a trading state due to scarce resources and a large population. For Japan, economic diplomacy was already established as an effective diplomatic tool in the 1930s by Kijuro Shidehara and Koki Hirota. Yet, their economic diplomacy was a measure not for expanding peace, but for rebuilding Japanese economic position after the Great Depression in 1929 and for anchoring Japan to international society after resigning from the League of Nations. After World War II, Japan tried to be trading state again. There are two background factors for this policy. First factor is pacifism, based on avoidance of militarism, as well as Article 9 of the new constitution promoted in November 1946. And second factor is the Japan-US Security Treaty, signed in September 1951. The backbone of Japanese trade state policy is the so-called Yoshida Doctrine, which first puts emphasis and importance on alliance with the United States. Second, focus on the economics to deconstruct the deconstruct the domestic economy. And third, keep rightly and force Japan's self-defense forces. And Shigeru Yoshida is often regarded as realist due to the long-lasting achievement of the Japanese economic prosperity under the US security. The Yoshida Doctrine successfully matched the US containment policy vis-a-vis communist bloc after the Korean War, especially. And Japan had expanded its trade during the 1960s and 70s. Until 1980s, Japan became a potential rival of the United States in the field of international trade. Until today, Japanese military expenditure has generally been kept down to 1%, and Japanese government has never abandoned the Yoshida Doctrine, and it is still at the center of the economic diplomacy, and it is still working. Next, Turkish case. At first, I have to mention important things. The first person who applied this trading state concept to Turkish foreign policy is Professor Şaban Kardeş. He always said to me this. And maybe many people know Professor Kemal Kilic. Now he is in Brookings Institute. He wrote one of the very good article about Turkey and trading state. And ex-Prime Minister and President Turgut Özal in 1980s, 1990s paid attention to trading state behavior like establishment BISEC in the Black Sea regions. And, but maybe most successful and dedicated for economic policy is led by AK Party. AK Party government, especially now Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoğlu, understands that economic interdependence is likely to contribute to achieving peace and stability in the Middle East, especially Middle East regions. Under the AK Party, Turkey took an initiative among various regional economic cooperation based on its economic success. One of the very good example is the Levant Quartet. The Levant Quartet was Turkey handled its trading state role in the Middle East. The Levant Quartet was established on December 2010 as a regional economic cooperation project among Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan in official and business level. And Levant Quartet aims at increasing the levels amount of trade to $1.5 trillion between Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan by 2015. And Turkey got initiated to this project. However, unfortunately, the Levant Quartet did not develop any further because of the Syrian civil war. And of course, this Turkish economic diplomacy, trading state diplomacy, is based on Turkey's economic success. And Turkish economic success was a model for the countries which experienced Arab Spring until 2012 or something. And also now Turkey put importance on free trade agreement, FTA. Turkey signed FTA with 18 countries and one organization. So now Turkey's trading policy is partly working because of now it is a very tough situation in the Middle East region. So partly working, I said. And second concept is humanitarian diplomacy, but unfortunately I have no time, so I skip this humanitarian diplomacy. But if you are interested in this humanitarian diplomacy compared to Japan and Turkey, maybe you can find my speaking before 1.5 years. I talked about this humanitarian diplomacy about Japan, Turkey. I talked this topic in first of this Turkish-Japanese conference. So I have no time, so I have to conclusion. Trading state diplomacy and humanitarian diplomacy are important for Turkey to show its soft power to the international society. Japan can be a maybe model or provide advice for Turkey's trading state diplomacy and humanitarian diplomacy as predecessor, I think. And historically, the relationships between Japan and Turkey are also characterized by trading state diplomacy and humanitarian diplomacy. Japan and Turkey have maintained good relationships since Ertuğrul frigate incident in 1890. Japan and Turkey helped each other when a crisis happened. For example, Tehran escape in 1980s and Izmit earthquake, the Great East Japan earthquake, one earthquake, etc. And also, these mutual assistance are typical humanitarian diplomacy, I think. And also, Japan and Turkey formally established diplomatic relationships in 1924. Since then, economy is the main topic for each country. For example, in 1926, Japan and Turkey held the Near East Trade Conference in Istanbul. And very recently, in July 2012, Japan and Turkey decided to promote the negotiation of the Economic Partnership Agreement, the EPA, until now. Now, maybe the beginning of this year, fourth negotiation held in Istanbul. In Ankara, no, Istanbul. I forgot. Yeah. So, I think Japan is a predecessor and can be a model for Turkey. After the Syrian crisis happened, Turkish foreign policy based on liberalism has pitted on dead end. Under a difficult situation for Turkey, the relationships with Japan is an opportunity to regain the soft power and prestige in regional and world politics. Maybe. Thank you very much.
And lastly, we move to the economic part of the Turkey-Japanese relation with Dr. Ali Akdemir. I will arrange the PowerPoint.
Thank you very much. After Kohei, I think it's my turn to entertain you. And he left at a very nice point about Turkey-Japan economic relations. That's what I want to continue from. Well, I'm not going to be very positive. I'm not a romantic economist that most of you prefer to hear, but I'll talk about some basic facts about Turkish and Japanese economic relations. But if you look at the basic problems of Turkish economy, you will see that for a long time in Turkey we had this illusion that Turkish economy is performing very well. Well, at the beginning, yes, with the 10 years, but compared to developed countries, of course, Turkey is a good performer in economic growth rate. But if you compare Turkey with its peers, there's what I mean by peers is emerging economies. You see that Turkey is performing fairly poor in terms of its economic growth performance. And this is the IMF World Economic Outlook data. And if you look at these figures and if you look at the projections, that's the situation seems to continue in the coming near future as well. So this is a very interesting picture. When I first saw this, I was very shocked. This shows you the trade to GDP ratio in Turkey and China at around the same time, from 1980 to 2012. You see that they almost overlap. So if you believe that China is a trading nation, and so is Turkey, and we have almost gone through the same path over the years, except for this brief period in 2006, 7, 8. So, well, that means trade is important for Turkey, and it's becoming more and more important for Turkey after the opening up in 1980. So, well, trade is important, but we are not a very good trader because we are running a huge trade current account deficit. Most of this large part of this coming from trade deficit. So Turkey again performs fairly poor compared with emerging economies, and according to the IMF, this is likely to continue. So let's talk about Japan and Turkey. So this the bottom line here is trade is important for Turkey. And Japan used to be an important trading partner until 2009, basically, until this is the middle of the global economic crisis. If you look at the data, you can find this data anywhere, and you see that Turkey's trade volume with Japan has been increasing until recently. But since then, we see a decline. So I believe we should take this very seriously. So a lot of us, I think we are very concerned about the worsening trade relations between Turkey and Japan, especially considering the negotiations between the two countries for a free trade agreement. And basically this free trade agreement is not because there's large potential, in my opinion, it's not because there are large potentials for trade, it's just because Turkey has to sign this FTA with Japan, because Japan is going to sign an FTA with the European Union. As part of the customs union, we have to sign an agreement with Japan, which is a good start, by the way, to improve the economic and trade relations. So my main take here is basically, well, Japan is losing its share in Turkey's total trade, but this is happening at around the same time when China's share is increasing. So China has become a more important trading partner for Turkey. So there seems to be a kind of a transformation between Turkey's economic trade relations with the East Asian countries. By East Asia, I'm referring to three powerhouses of the region. Turkey is trading with these are Japan, Korea, and China, of course. So, looking at the trade relations with Turkey and Japan, in line with its declining importance in Turkey's trade, Japan is occupying a smaller share of Turkey's trade deficit as well. I know many international relations scholars really care about trade deficit, and it may become a diplomatic issue between countries, considering the trade frictions between Japan and the US in the 70s and 80s. Well, in Turkey, we are not there yet. We constantly run trade deficits against these three countries, Japan, China, and Korea. It doesn't seem to be any big problem for us yet. But I believe that there are certain, at the surface we see a change in trade relations, but equally important is the structure of trade. Turkey has been basically at the current level of economic development and industrialization. Turkey is yet at a level producing only middle technology manufactured products, can only export this kind of items to nearby countries, including also European Union. But we are importing a lot of investment goods. These are vehicles, machines to make further production in the future. Turkey is yet at that state, and this has been continuing over the years. But the situation is a bit different when it comes to, well, these are basically some trade numbers. If you look at Japanese, Turkey and Japan trade relations and the major items Turkey is exporting, these are the main items you see. I don't know whether you can see that, but we are basically exporting agriculture, textile, this kind of things to Japan, and importing heavy industry products. So if you are a Marxist, you must be inclined to believe that there is this kind of dependency theory, kind of a relation between Turkey and Japan, that one side is exploiting the other. I don't believe so. But still, one may be inclined to think that way. But if you look at Korea and China, do you see that Turkey is not yet at that level of the Turkey's relations with Korea and China are not yet at the state of its trade with Japan. So, excluding China recently, we are more trading intermediate products with these two nations, Korea and China. So maybe in the near future, if you look at the trends in China, the investment goods or heavy industry imports from this country has been increasing quite recently. Well, in Japan, we're still more dependent on more technologically sophisticated products. So the message so far is that Turkey has been trading with East Asia and importing a lot of investment goods, especially from Japan, but mostly intermediate products. Turkey is also exporting intermediate products. So intermediate products are industrial inputs that are in the middle range of technological sophistication. So a country that dependent on foreign inputs for its industries, I think it deserves attention. So that brought my mind, why not do that? So I looked at data and I checked, well, this is FDI from Japan, and you see that in recent years, China has been very aggressive in investing in Turkey as well. If you look at the important inputs that Turkey is, industrial inputs, Turkey is importing from East Asia, basically, but in general, Turkey has been dependent on foreign inputs. So this is an economy here for its industrial production, highly dependent, for certain industries up to 80%, very highly dependent on inputs produced in other countries. And I wanted to see how this dependence on China, Korea, and Japan has evolved over time. So I checked the data and I saw a big database, World Input-Output database, which is available online. I did some calculations, and I saw the trends here in dependence of Turkey on inputs from these countries. Actually, I added also two more countries, USA and Germany. Germany is a traditional source of supply for industrial supplies. So basically, this table shows you, this graph shows you that the dependence in Turkey has been increasing for major export industries. That's also major industries in Turkey. But for some, well, it has been declining. I don't want to bore you with lots of details and data, but the main message is going to be very clear here. Look at this data. This is for imported inputs, while this is for textile industry. Textile is one of the major industries in Turkey, also accounting for some closing of the trade deficit in Turkey. But if you look at textile industry here, Turkey has become more and more dependent on inputs from China. And this has been especially very fast since 2001. 2001 was an important year because in November of that year, China joined the WTO, started playing the game according to its rules. And this is for textiles industry. If you look at other industries, you see that the share of China is increasing. Again, in this industry here, metals, every industry you see here, these are the major industries I think are for Turkey. At the same time, the dependence on Japan is declining. So this transformation in trade is not happening in only commodities, but also in supplies, industrial supplies. So I think there's a point here that Turkey, for Turkey, Japan is not a very, very important supplier and a trading partner anymore, losing its importance to the cost of increasing share of Korea and China. I didn't mention Korea here, but Korea's share is also increasing. And my last point, I know I'm running out of time, my last point here is this is happening at the time of demise of the Japanese industries. These are the shares of some high-tech products by Japanese industries, Japanese firms in the world market. You see big declines. If you look at, for example, the car navigation devices, in 2003, the only place you could buy Carnaby, as it's in Japanese, the only place you could buy a car navigation system was Japan. But nowadays, only 20%. I think it's even less now. So I believe there's a long way to go for Turkey and Japan to improve their trade relations. I just wanted to bring forth some basic facts which you might find useful in considering in what direction Turkey and Japan trade relations and economic relations basically is going. So I want to finally point out something very important. According to METI, METI is the Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry in Japan, they claim that future growth, industrial growth in Japan goes through foreign direct investment. So why not start from Turkey? Thank you.
Great, another good call from Dr. Hakim. Now, we are a bit behind schedule, but I don't want to miss the Q&A session. If there are some participants who want to ask questions, very briefly directed questions, we will be happy to take the questions now. Ambassador.
Thank you. Let me take a seat and just a couple of comments, not questions. I was a bit confused, to listen to, a presentation by Dr. Akemik. And frankly speaking, I thought, let me allow to be candid because, as I said in my opening remarks, I think Turkey and Japan share one commonality: honest people with dignity and pride. And in terms of that, I think a number of Japanese are perplexed to hear that we are pigeonholed together along with Koreans and Chinese when it comes to the state of economic affairs. Many would say Japan is the third largest economy. China is the second largest. I think this just simple comparison is not sufficient. I should say Japan is the second largest advanced economy. Advanced is the word. And I thought Turkey is aspiring to become advanced economy, to be among number 10 in the international community. If you aim, not so high, it's okay to strengthen ties with countries renowned for low wage and just quantity. But if you aim so high to be among number 10 or so, I think Japan should be the natural partner. As you rightly said about the importance of investment, because Japan is a big investing power. If you take a look at the case of the United States, if you take a close look at what has been happening in European market, certainly Japanese investment played a much bigger role than that of China or South Korea. Finally, on the importance of EPA, Economic Partnership Agreement. You know what is the best-selling wine in Japan right now? It used to be French, it used to be Italian. But now, French is number 2, Italian wine is number 3. Number 1 selling wine in Japan is from Chile. Why? Because of EPA between Japan and Chile. So I think there is a lot of hope for the coming EPA between Turkey and Japan. That is my take. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Other participants, any remarks, questions? Ali Hocam, would you like to say a few words in response?
I agree with most of the ambassador's concerns. He said that they are my concerns too. So I believe there's a lot of things that both countries can cooperate with. I assume that I hope that there will be a competition for cooperation between Korea, Japan, and China for investing in Turkey or trading with Turkey. But I just wanted to show you the current situation. I didn't say anything about future hopes. As a Turkish national, I strongly hope that these relations will go deeper and deeper and materialize in the future. And I personally like this because 1.5% in my family is Japanese, another 1.5% Turkish. I really hope that this is going to materialize. But one thing I think we can learn from Japan is that policy making has been one of the comparative advantages in Japan, especially when it comes to industrial policy. And designing industrial policy for Turkey is a big deficiency nowadays. We don't have a clearly defined industrial policy in this country. And as the first speaker pointed out, Japan has a long history of policy making in this area. Probably we can cooperate in that area as well. But I agree with most of the things you mentioned.
With that note, we conclude the first panel. Now, I would love to invite the speakers for the second panel to step up and the speakers for the first one to step down. Thank you again.